Welcome back in, everybody, to another episode of the Crystal Basketball Podcast. My name is Ethan Fuller. Joining me is Rashad Landers, dynamic duo. Rashad, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, man.
I am as well, and we are back at it with some more 2021 high school prospects. This is our fourth episode, I think, breaking down four players at a time. I think it's our sixth total, but this is our fourth kind of film episode. We have gone through quite a lot of prospects at the top. We're going to hit some more five stars today, and by the end of this, we'll have almost all the five stars covered. I feel like we'll see, we'll have to count them up and see where we are. But this is 13 through 16, not based on any rankings or anything, just based on some guys at the top that we haven't gotten to yet. We'll be breaking down Trevor Keels, Aminu Mohammed, Hunter Sallis, and Harrison Ingram, all very unusual prospects, very unique in their own rights, and I'm excited to get going on this. So, Rashad, is there anyone you want to start with first specifically?
I think we can start with Harrison Ingram.
Okay. Yeah, let's start with Harrison Ingram, who, as far as these prospects goes, he's probably one of the more unusual high school players that are in this class. And obviously, we've talked about it. This class is pretty crazy, ranging from guys like Chet Holmgren to Jaden Hardy, all sorts of different player types in this class. And Harrison Ingram is really another one of his own. He is a kind of wing small forward, very strong. I believe he's 210, 215. Not exactly an athletic player, really by most means. He definitely plays with power, but he's not gonna explode out of the gym or dunk all over your face a lot. So that makes him kind of interesting as far as not really being kind of the mixtape guy that gets you hype in high school, but very fundamentally sound player. He's improving on the perimeter, can make shots, make a lot of different shots. I wouldn't call him a lock to make a lot of these shots, but he's gotten a lot better in high school. His burst, in my opinion, is a little bit underrated. I think he can kind of explode off the dribble better than most people think. His change of pace is pretty good too. He's a good ball handler, smart decision maker with the ball. And overall, it's just kind of his high IQ, great team defender, really just a winning player. But again, the question with Ingram is how much upside is there for a guy who isn't the most athletic person on the floor, isn't an elite shot creator, shot maker, isn't going to pass you open as a ball handler. So I guess yeah, my question to you, Rashad, is what's the what's the ceiling for a guy like Harrison Ingram?
Well, let me start off with Harrison Ingram. He gets a lot of media attention with him being in the Texas area. Brad, the guy who's over Ball is Life South, which covers a lot of Texas people, you often see them saying, "How is this guy a 5 star?" And I think it's because, like you said, he's not a mixtape type guy where it'd be hard to get a mixtape for Harrison Ingram, honestly. But I think his upside is going to be his IQ, honestly, and the way he talks. Another reference to Baldur's Life, they released a video with him mic'd up, and I think it was kind of like a school ball team because they didn't look very good. But he was kind of talking, telling everyone where to be, everyone where to be. You know, it's gonna be things like that because he's not very explosive. His shooting tendencies is okay, but I think Harrison Ingram will go to be more of a facilitator, kind of like a Peyton Pritchard guy who scores when he wanted to at Oregon. Even though they're two different positions, they have like the same body build. Uh, but yeah, Peyton Pritchard, a guy who eventually turned himself into a scorer. I see Harrison Ingram the same way. I think he develops in college. I don't think he's one and done, maybe two at the most. But if he does go one and done, I think it'll be showing us that he was not that aggressive in high school, but college he just wanted to expand his game and stand out.
Yeah, I feel like it's especially if you're going to go one and done as a freshman, it really is because the physical tools stood out along with the production. And Harrison Ingram, I mean, I agree that he's a very fundamentally sound player, but he's probably not going to put up 20 and 8 and shoot the lights out in his first year of college, even though he's probably going to be one of the best players on the team at Stanford. So maybe that takes him out of the one and done conversation. Who knows? Maybe yeah, he shows something that we didn't see. And there are plenty of players that turned a multi-year career into a very successful high draft slot in the NBA. And by no means am I saying you're not saying this either, I believe that Harrison Ingram's not an NBA player. I think he brings the IQ, the awareness. He's someone that scouts are going to love because you can plug him in whether it's college or the NBA, and he's going to be a net positive on your team, and he's going to make your team better, even if he's not the guy for you. So maybe that takes him out of the one and done running. But yeah, I do think it's really interesting that he committed to Stanford. That was about a little over a month ago. He committed to Stanford. Um, Kind of surprising, honestly, for me, although I know Stanford has had a great run of getting players recently. Zaire Williams, another notable one. But Ingram's interesting to me because he isn't going there probably, I mean, to kind of be the top dog at Stanford. Like he's probably going there one because he's a really smart person and Stanford is a fantastic school. And also maybe he just likes the style of the team. And so I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, off the court, he's a very humble person, and that's what stood out to a lot of scouts. You often see scouts talking about physical ability and basketball aspects, but a lot of times with Harrison Ingram, it was his grades and ACT score and stuff like that. And another reason why, honestly, Harrison Ingram can keep himself from being one and done. I see him as one of the guys trying to do maybe 2 or 3 years, possibly get a degree because he was very serious on it. And like you said with Stanford, we're seeing a lot where Issa Silva, another guy that's in the class of Harrison Ingram, another very smart guy. But he had the basketball talent as well. Zaire Williams, many people don't know that he was another very smart guy. So right now, Stanford, they're getting 5 stars, but they're going after the guys who has the maturity in them, and it's good to see them land in prospects. Honestly.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. And Ingram will be definitely someone to watch just because, yeah, as you said, he's just a very kind of smart, mature person, and it translates to the court too. Like if you watch his game, I don't know if you'd agree with this, maybe behind Jabari Smith or maybe even ahead of Jabari Smith, he probably plays the most mature game in this class, which is very interesting.
Yeah, no doubt. I think he is probably the most mature player in this class. There's not a lot of talkers in general in this class or the ability to show leadership on the court. And Harrison Ingram, he is just like it's just naturally there. It's not forced. The coach is not asking him to do it. It's just his natural personality.
Hmm. Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on Harrison Ingram. Of course, he's a 5 star and he's obviously a very talented player. Again, someone that might be lacking some of the upside because of his physical frame and his speed and his athleticism. Might not have some of the upside that a lot of the guys we talk about have, but definitely like an extremely unique prospect in that respect. Anything else on Ingram that you think is important to mention?
No, that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah. All right. So Ingram is someone there. I believe 24/7 had him as I believe it was top 10. Let me check to make sure on that. He was 11. So 24/7 has him 11 in their composite rankings. So interesting to see where that'll line up with some of the other guys we talk about. We'll move on to this is a guy that I think we've mentioned him in just about every episode of the 2021 class, but we've never actually broken him down, just because he's tied to so many of these other players, and that is Trevor Keels. Keels, a strong, high energy shot making guard from PVI, Paul the Sixth Catholic. One of the best teams in the country. Really a fun team to watch. I remember I was at Hoop Hall when they beat Sierra Canyon. That was a wild game, and Keels really was kind of the leader of that team in that game. He played fantastically, hustled on both ends, made a lot of big shots, and played against guys at Sierra Canyon who were probably long. They're longer, they're more athletic than he is, but he has the physical build and kind of the hustling energy motor that you really like to see in a young player. So what are your thoughts on Keels right off the bat?
Yeah, that game was what woke me up on Trevor Keels, actually watching them play against Sierra Canyon. And honestly, unlike a lot of people, I had Paul Six winning because Sierra Canyon, they have the names and all of that, but them as a team and that press that they always try to run, it just never works in my opinion. No shots at the coaching or anything, but when you got that much talent, it's certain teams that you should beat, and a lot of people had them favored, but I had Paul Six favored because I know WCAC, they're going to come play. They're talented, but they're also going to be very fundamental. And Sierra Canyon, they play against USP Prep coming up this year, which is Imani Bates and some more
Yep.
guys, Dylan Hunter, I believe. And but that's the matchup everybody's talking about because of the names. But there's a matchup that I wanted to see last year that's going to happen this year, and that's Montverde versus Sunrise Christian. And I
That's
think
a
that's a way better matchup right
that's
there.
a crazy game. Do you know where that's being played?
I have no idea where it's. I think it's Hoop Hall actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
man,
So
I as long as hoop ball happens, that's it's gonna be an insane slate.
yeah,
Excuse me.
but
Yeah.
Trevor Keels, elite shooting. Paul Biancardi, he fell in love with him after that game. And when Paul Biancardi falls in love with you, just expect your ESPN ranking to just shoot up. It's exactly what happened to Trevor Keels. He shocked a lot of people. I mean, lights out. Like you said, his build, it's almost NBA ready. I think if he lose a little bit less body fat, then he'll be perfectly there. But his shooting is going to carry him a long way. His final three schools is what I like is they fit him as well. So he knows his game and he sticks to it, which a lot of players they try to shy away to get more interest from schools. No, he knows where he wants to be. He knows his game. He's looking at the coaches and he's looking at a possible role that he can play that comforts him.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And his final three schools, Duke, Villanova, and Virginia, really every single one, as you said, like you could see him fitting in. Duke, obviously, with that loaded class, he comes in as kind of a shot making combo guard for them. Virginia, defense first. Keels definitely has a solid defensive foundation, and Virginia loves those kind of big body players at any position. There you go with Trevor Keels. Villanova, kind of pro style, very fundamentally sound team, always in a winning conversation. And if you talk about PBI, that's really the same example with Trevor Keels. So I think you're exactly right. And Keels is interesting to me because he is a great shooter, can pull up, shoot off the catch, has that down. As you said, very strong. Probably could turn a little bit of that more into lean muscle, but great start for him, especially as a kind of a 6'4", 6'5", probably going to be a shooting guard where you're going to be undersized, but that strength is important. And again, like his motor is awesome, and it really just attracts people to his game because he plays with such energy. The things that I want to see more from him, not an amazing player around the rim, which is kind of surprising despite his size, and maybe if he can play a little bit more physically. He's not exactly a blow by athlete. He's not going to burn someone, beat anyone off the dribble, really. He's kind of more of a perimeter player on offense. And I wouldn't consider him, although he's a guard, I wouldn't consider him a facilitator, although maybe that was because he was playing with two other fantastic guards in a row, right, in Jeremy Roach and Doug McDaniel. So maybe he just didn't get that chance.
Yeah, and I think that probably be one of the things that he step up in this year. On ball ability. I'm honestly interested to see how he handles it because I don't think he really handled the ball in AAU as well. He's always played with good guards, so it'll be interesting to see how he develops his game and become more of an on ball player.
Yeah, for sure. And as you said, once Roach is gone, especially just seeing Trevor Keels play with Doug McDaniel, who is a awesome guard. I've talked about him a lot off air, how much I love Doug McDaniel, but he also, I mean, he's undersized. Keels is going to have to help him out just on some of the defensive matchups, help out with some of the offensive matchups too. And I think this will be a big opportunity for Keels to kind of take the reins as a leading scorer. And to go back to the schools, he's cut it down to three, which is as short a list as you're really going to see from most of these prospects that have committed. Is there a school that sticks out to you? We've said Duke, I think, all this time. Does that change for you? Do you think there's another one that has a good case for him?
I think Duke, Jeremy Roach is there. It's a system where he can come in and be mainly an offensive player. But he also has a couple of friends at Villanova. That's what I've been hearing a lot. So he has a lot of friends at Nova as well. It's another system where he fits in as a scorer. Nova really doesn't have any restrictions. But I think the underrated one and the underestimated one is Virginia because you have the defense oriented first with Tony Bennett holding opponents under 50. but Tony Bennett's offense usually come from his perimeter players. So if you bring in a guy like Trevor Keels, who can bring that scoring aspect, but you keep your defense, it'll basically be the ball in his hands. And I think that's why he put Virginia in there from an offensive perspective, because the defense is always going to be there with Tony Bennett's system. But I think one of the big things that play into it, if he doesn't commit early, is if Jabri Abdur-Rahim goes one and done or not for Virginia, because he was obviously or honestly one of the best scorers in 2020, which a lot of people didn't take credit for.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see him come back. I think you made a great point about just how much Virginia could use a scorer like Keels. It's pretty rare that they have those kind of all country scorer types. I mean, Abdur Rahim you mentioned, but even like Malcolm Brogdon wasn't really that guy. Kyle Guy obviously was great, but he wasn't like that guy. No pun intended. I didn't even realize that.
Cal Guy was, oh my god. Cal Guy was he was my favorite player actually when he was in high school.
Really?
He let me down not going to Indiana. But him at Virginia, I think the only reason why Cal Guy wasn't the guy was because Ty Jerome was there as well.
That's true.
Both of those guys are in the NBA now, so
yeah, that's a great point, and I think that's underrated that Virginia over the last couple of years, and I think in some articles I've written, I've criticized Virginia and saying like they're a great college program, but they don't really send out NBA guys, and that's kind of changed over the last like 5 or so years. They've really started to. I mean, DeAndre Hunter is obviously the one most people think of, but between Brogdon, Kyle Guy, Ty Jerome, Abdur Rahim probably going to the NBA, like they've done a good job, and maybe that's a good case for Trevor Keels. Again, Duke's still probably the front runner because Duke is Duke, and that class would just be insane if they were able to get Trevor Keels. So we'll see what happens there. But this is one of the lists, as we've talked about all these lists. I think this one is the most interesting because it's the most, I would say, the most competitive out of some of the other lists that we've seen.
yeah. The other list was you kind of know what you have and know what to expect, know potentials. This one, I remember you saying this a couple episodes ago. This class may be a big hit or miss class. I remember you saying that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is interesting, and so that's Keels. I guess final thoughts with him. I'm a huge Keels fan, especially if he kind of takes this senior year upon himself and becomes kind of more of that alpha scorer that we see. All of a sudden, you have a guy who can really do almost all of it. And so I definitely like his potential. Any last Keels thoughts from you?
Yeah, basically, just elite shooting, great build. His potential lies on his ball handling aspect and how he improves on that. But pretty much everything else is pretty good to me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And let's go to these are two prospects who I hadn't watched a whole lot of film on before this, to be honest. The first one I think we should talk about is Aminu Mohammed. He's again another really unique kind of player because he's 6'4", but he is a physical. I mean, he's basically a wing. He's not really kind of I wouldn't even consider him really a combo guard. He's pretty much a wing or like a scoring two guard at this point, despite only being 6'4". He's got an awesome first step, just great burst. Like he's a pretty good ball handler, and between that, his physicality and his kind of explosiveness, it's so tough to stop him off the dribble. And I think that's a great foundation for him. Good rebounder, great around the rim, which is important because he's not super big, not super long. And so that ability to be crafty around the rim is big. What were some of the things you noticed from watching Mohammed?
Yeah, right now, the only people that know about Aminu Mohammed is real basketball people that pay attention to basketball. Because you look at it, this is a guy that's in the top 15 for a reason, but you don't hear a lot about. And I think it's because, if you go to AAU, he played alongside Zion Harmon and Mark Williams. Of course, they're going to have all the attention. And, he was kind of there as well. And he was like the highest ranked out of all those guys when you think about it. And then you go to his school ball where he plays on like a local school that's kind of like an academy level.
Mm-hmm.
So, you don't get a lot of recognition there, but he's a very strong finisher. I noticed that he has a jump shot, but he doesn't tend to use it. He's more about finishing, and he has sneaky athleticism as well. I think he's kind of like a dog type of game with the ability to score. I think that's why he's ranked so high because Paul Biancardi knows that he can score whenever he wants to, but it's the mentality set inside of him that separates him from a lot of players in this class.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I personally hadn't heard a whole lot about Mohammed, so it's true. Like between the small school and kind of the backseat role he took at AAU, like not a lot of people are going to know about this guy, but I think you summed him up really well. He's such a great athlete, such a great kind of mentality, solid defender overall, pretty good passer, and I think that's the next step that he has to take. Because at 6'4", you really can't play like a you can't play as like a small forward. That's not going to be successful. But if he can develop as a secondary ball handler, facilitator, um, with his strength, with his athleticism, I think that'll open up a lot more. And he's a pretty good passer already, but if you can kind of take that next step, I think that's a game changer for him. And then also just the shot making, he's got to develop his outside shot more. It doesn't look bad, it doesn't look terrible, but he's just got to consistently, one, be willing to shoot it, and two, kind of knock it down more. And that would really be a game changer, especially as a shooting guard. But he again is really interesting. I think 24/7 had a player comp of Justice Winslow, which I think is kind of interesting. Muhammad's not as long. Winslow's a lot bigger. I think Winslow's 6'7". Muhammad's only 6'4". But I could see him as like a Winslow light where he plays with power, good passer, not necessarily going to be your go to kind of lead scorer, but definitely a good option there, which is interesting. I was intrigued by that comparison.
Yeah, I think he's one of those guys where he'll have 30, but you wouldn't even know it.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. I think I like the Justice Winslow comparison, but two different body sizes.
hmm
If you go to college, I think that will honestly be the reason why, because people would watch him play and they would be like, this dude's a projected lottery pick. He's not that good, but you look at him, he's probably averaging like 22, but you wouldn't know because it's mainly layups and free throws. But that's what win games. And I think if he goes to the NBA, even though he doesn't have the height, he plays kind of a role that like Andre Iguodala plays right now, where you have a player that can pretty much defend and with a little bit of ball handling aspect, and then some type of scoring ability. So I think this is another guy. Essentially, I think he's going to be a role player in the future.
Yeah, I think so too. Someone who can get you shots, but isn't going to kind of be your leader and someone that you should lean on. But at the same time, like that athleticism and that kind of energy that he plays with, he has a good motor, is always going to be helpful. So thinking about schools with this guy, he doesn't have a list, I don't think, or a set list. He's gotten a lot of different offers. I saw that Rivals actually, I want to hear your thoughts on this. Rivals ranked him as most likely to go to Indiana, which would be interesting. They had Indiana, they had Georgetown, Louisville was up there, Maryland was up there. A lot of those, because he's from the DC area, a lot of those DC based schools, which is interesting. How is there anything that kind of sticks out to you? I know it's kind of a huge list from him so far.
I haven't heard much from my Indiana sources about that, so that's kind of interesting. I'm a little bit excited now. I think he does fit in at a program like Indiana, though. We have a love-hate relationship. A lot of us fans with Archie Miller. And I'm not afraid to say it because he knows it himself.
Mhm.
We've seen him say things like "Don't give up on me" and stuff like that. But I think he fits into schools in that upper area. I honestly don't see him coming to a SEC school unless it's like he gets a Kentucky or something
Mhm.
or a Pac-12 school. Yeah, I think he fits in like Big East, Big Ten, those main two conferences. What a lot of people forget is if you look at the style of basketball, if you really pay attention to basketball, SEC is all around. Pac-12 is more perimeter oriented. Big 12 is just can we just please score as much as we can, just like it is for basketball? And then you have the schools, the Big Ten, uh, they have defense, but it's mainly, can I outscore you? And then you go to the Big East, and you're like, this is defense, and it's going to be interesting to see. I think he fits in a Big East or a Big Ten school, or I wouldn't be surprised. I think he plays ball in Missouri. So, if he does end up in the SEC, the Mizzou Tigers or somebody wouldn't be a surprise as well.
Yeah, that would be an interesting one because Missouri hasn't had a whole lot of big names go through there since the Porter cousins. I think they were cousins.
Brothers, yeah.
They were brothers. Okay, Porter. Yeah, the Porter brothers obviously were two huge gets for them. But Missouri would be an interesting one. So yeah, we'll obviously keep an eye on Mohammed because he hasn't really trimmed his list down, which is interesting because he's usually, I feel like a lot of these seniors, one, are making commitments, or two, have at least kind of trimmed it down to a top 10 or something. So interesting to kind of see how he approaches this with the high school season starting to come up. So that's Aminu Mohammed. Any last thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting how Rivals actually got that, Indiana prediction, because he's like a very quiet guy. He's not a very social media oriented guy, so that's why you don't see a lot of predictions on him. Or
Mhm.
I don't think we see a cut list yet because he's not very, active. I would say on social media, which is another reason why a lot of people don't know about him. So it'll just be interesting to see how his recruiting process goes. I don't think that a lot of people will get a correct prediction or even like a hint out of him.
Yeah, that's interesting because as I'm looking at this Rivals article, they wrote Indiana and they also said we wouldn't recommend betting the house on Indiana. So they're not extremely confident. They also they're hyping up Georgetown too as a number two, but at the same time, uh, Jeff Erman of 24/7 has given a crystal ball prediction and has Indiana as that school too. So again, as you said, he's kind of a name that not a lot of fans are going to know because of the schools and the places he's played at, not the most active on social media. So it really is pretty interesting to kind of see how these predictions form up. Um, Either way, I guess my last question for you on Muhammad is there a recent Indiana kind of recruit that he compares to? He's not really like Romeo Langford. He's a pretty different type of player, even though they both kind of played that 2-3. Would you consider Muhammad like anyone that's come to Indiana before?
I think he's a Oladipo. Around
Interesting.
the same height. Oladipo, what a lot of people don't know is in college he was more of a like athletic kind of guy who could shoot an occasional three, and if he was on with his three, then he was pretty much unguardable that night, and that's why we were so good. We were always number one or number two when he was there. So yeah, I'm getting kind of Oladipo vibes. A guard that's there this year that he kind of reminds me of Jordan Geronimo, a guy who wasn't very highly recruited. He was a 4-star, but he's around the same height as well with the same build and same type of game. So does he look like an Indiana guy? Of course he does. But that Georgetown, there's a lot going on with Georgetown right now. I don't see any recruits going there, honestly.
Yeah, there is a lot going on. And we'll have to kind of keep up with them because they're Georgetown's in a place. Um, I guess yeah, that kind of wraps up Aminu Mohammed. Very interesting prospect that I'm going to try and keep an eye on more because I didn't really know too much about him before this episode. That's Aminu Mohammed. We'll get to our last guy right now. Another really kind of strange prospect in this class. He does remind me of a lot of guys in the 2020 high school class, and that's Hunter Sallis. Sallis is a extremely kind of long, tall point guard, very, very lanky, but very, very long. Um, Likes to attack the rim. He's a pretty good shot maker off the dribble. His shot form's a little odd, but it goes in and he's comfortable with it off the catch, off the dribble. Um, he likes to attack the rim, very athletic, but I wouldn't consider him an elite finisher. Sometimes it seems like he's kind of charging in there, and he doesn't have a lot of size, so he doesn't play with that much physicality. So he gets stripped a lot, does draw a lot of fouls too. But I instantly kind of thought of this guy as a almost like a Terrence Clark light. Because he's a pretty good ball handler, but he's not gonna I don't see him as kind of a facilitator, but he's a good ball handler, can make shots, is athletic, but isn't like a lock at all ends of the court, which is similar to where Terrence Clark is right now. He's also not an impact defender in my opinion. Again, I've said this already a bunch of times, but the issue is just he's so skinny. And so he can't do a whole lot on either end because of that. What are your thoughts on Sallis?
Yeah, he's very crafty, and even though he's very skinny, I like the long guys for some reason.
Uh-huh.
It's very good to watch. I watched him play against IMG Academy. I think he goes to Miller Grove or Mill Grove or something like that.
Yeah, Millard
They
North,
played
I think.
against, yeah, they played against IMG, and he controls the game. I will say that he plays at his own pace. Another very mature guy in this class. I gotta admit, another very mature guy. IMG they try to speed things up, fast breaks, dunks, get the crowd involved. He slowed the whole game down. It was competitive at first, but it's IMG, so of course they're gonna pull
Mhm.
away. But he played well. He hit his shots. I think a comparison to him, they say he's 6'3", but I'm hearing a lot of reports that he's 6'5" now.
He looks a
And
lot taller than 6'3".
yeah, so I'm getting the 6'5" range. And a great comparison to me is one of my favorite guards in this draft class is Tyrese Halliburton. Both guys are 6'5", very skinny builds, but and they both have odd releases. This is like it's adding all up. Both odd releases. The thing about Halliburton is he's so complete though, man. He's very mature. Very like Halliburton's pass first, even though he was a guy that was almost averaging like 22 in college, I think. Like 22 and maybe 10 assists, I believe,
Yeah.
at one point. So that tells you how, mature Halliburton game is. I think Hunter Sallis could turn into a Tyrese Halliburton type player, if he gets the confidence that Halliburton has in his shot and improves his playmaking and passing.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And Halliburton, I see the kind of role that Salas could play is something like Halliburton played in Iowa State, where he's not kind of leading your offense, but he is a great passer, good facilitator, can make shots. He's not gonna be all over the court attacking the rim, scoring 1,000 points a game. But I don't think the same thing is true with Salas. But both of them are very kind of steady guys. And I agree with you. Like long guards are awesome. I initially thought, obviously, I think especially right now, when you see kind of these guards like Salas, you immediately just go to BJ Boston, who I think is amazing, and I think he's not to get too off track. I'd probably consider him top 3 in the 2020 class. I'm a huge BJ Boston guy, but I think Salas is a little different because BJ Boston is a lot faster and he plays with a lot more pace than Salas does. Salas, as you said, likes to slow it down. And Halliburton's interesting. Maybe the one difference is that Salas is a lot longer than Halliburton is. Halliburton isn't kind of the super long guy that Hunter Salas is, and maybe that's a benefit for Salas. But um, it's interesting that he isn't kind of going to be a dynamic scoring point guard, but it feels like he still is in control a lot, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, Halliburton. It's another guy that I love, man. I have Scotty Barnes, and then I think right after him is Tyrese Halliburton.
Mhm.
And it's because a lot of people don't pay attention to USA basketball. When you see a lot of top recruits have one-time gold medalists in their name, it's because they played in the FIBA World Cup, and that's where scouts. There's a lot of guys you don't notice, like the U19 class or the U19 USA team.
Mhm.
You will have guys like Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green. That actually was a team. You had guys like that. And then you had a couple of college guys in there. Reggie Perry. The reason why his draft stock went up was because of USA basketball. The reason why Tyrese Halliburton is a projected lottery pick was because of USA basketball. And people, if you play USA basketball, in my opinion, I feel like you have a better advantage of being a lottery pick. So Hunter Sallis, I've seen him at the USA, combines and stuff.
Uh-huh.
But if he can actually get on the team, I wouldn't be surprised if he turns into a lottery pick just
Wow.
because of his build.
Wow. Yeah, that's high praise. Wow. So definitely keep an eye on it as we look at the schools. I just pulled up his top 12. Do you want me to read them off to you? Is that the easiest way to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we got a lot of kind of classic schools in his top 12. You obviously have Kentucky, immediate, going to be a standout. Michigan, Oregon, Gonzaga, UNC, Auburn. Oh, I can slow. Am I going too fast?
Oh, yeah, I'm perfect. I'm
Okay,
going right
so after Auburn, we got UCLA, Louisville, Kansas, Creighton. Creighton's an interesting one. I haven't seen them a lot. Alabama and Iowa State rounded out. So that's kind of your top 12.
Okay, so UK, of course. I've been hearing a lot of UK with Hunter Sallis for some reason.
Hmm.
So I say UK is a front runner. Michigan has missed out on a lot of recruits lately, so I don't think they get him. Oregon, you never know with Oregon, honestly.
Yeah.
Dana Altman, he recruits, man. So going UK right now, Oregon is definitely a good one. Even though Mark Few gave him an offer from Gonzaga, I don't see him as a Gonzaga player. Gonzaga has some guards. Outside of Jalen Suggs, they're bringing in Dominic Harris and that Julian kid, and you have the guys that's already there, like Yayi and stuff. I don't think he'll particularly go to Gonzaga.
Mhm.
Guards already there, so I'd mark them off. UNC has missed out on a lot of recruits lately. Uh, you know, uh, Roy Williams was in a slump. I'll mark them off. Auburn is hitting though. Bruce Pearl is hitting right now. So I definitely put Auburn up there. UCLA, I have no clue where that came from. Uh, there might be some money involved there, but I don't feel like he's a money kid. Louisville, Chris Mack can recruit, but he hasn't landed anything lately.
Yeah, Louisville will be a surprise.
Yeah, so and then Kansas, I don't see him as a Bill Self player, man. Bill Self is a system coach. So with a slow guard like Sallis, he would kind of fit there. But a lot of people don't want to play for Bill Self. Especially being a young recruit. Creighton, who's making a lot of noise. I think they're coming into the NCAA like preseason top 10, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah. So Doug McDermott's dad over there, he keeps Creighton in the looks.
Uh-huh.
But this is probably their most talented team we've seen in a while coming up this year. Bama, Nate Oates is on fire right now. I wouldn't be surprised. Iowa State, Tyrese Halliburton comparison.
Yeah. I would say, so let's see. I think that all makes a lot of sense. I would say Bama, I would be a lot higher on if they didn't just get JD Davison. So I feel like that kind of is a conflict of interest there. Kansas was a good point. I feel like at first I was like, oh yeah, I feel like Kansas always gets some good guards, but he really isn't that type of player. Um, UK is obviously going to be at the top of the list until proven otherwise. Let's see. Auburn is an interesting one because he'd be a cool pairing with Jabari Smith, I think, as two guys who are a little bit understated but great players in their own rights. And then Iowa State, I think I'd have to see it to believe it that they can get a guy of Salas's caliber. But as you said, Tyrese Halliburton comparison's interesting. And it'd be pretty cool to see him go there because I feel like Iowa State in recent memory has fielded a lot of great teams. I was looking up, so Salas is from Nebraska, which is interesting. Maybe he likes the Midwest, and an Iowa State team like that is interesting. He's probably been around the Big 12. Um, so can maybe that is another pitch for Kansas in that way. But yeah, I guess to kind of overlap with you, I would probably go UK, Auburn, Iowa State, and I guess wild card is Oregon would probably be the four that I would be looking out for the most.
Yeah, like you were saying with Iowa State, they're always around because it's considered transfer university for basketball. So they always have a lot of transfers. When it comes to recruiting, though, you don't see a lot of recruiting from them unless
Mhm.
it's like 3 stars or low 4 stars. So it'll be interesting to see, but that Tyrese Halliburton, somebody probably feeding that into his ear right now.
I hope so because I think that's an interesting comparison. All right, I guess that wraps up Hunter Salas. Any last thoughts on what he brings to the table?
I think you're just gonna get a great point guard with very physical tools. A very mature guard as well. He's honestly a prospect right now. Talent's there, but he's still a prospect. A lot of potential though. So you can't be mad at him at all.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. All right, and then I guess to keep going with our usual theme, at the end of each run, we rank the four. So this is a really interesting one. I'm interested to see if we have very different lists or not. Do you want to go first or second with these
I,
guys?
I'll go second with these guys.
Okay. So top four, I think I'm gonna go. I'm a big Trevor Keels guy. I'm gonna put Keels at the top. Um, let's see. This is man, it's so tough to rank. I think if we're going NBA prospect, this guy's lower, but if we're going just player that I want on my team right now, I'm probably going Harrison Ingram 2, Sallis 3, Aminu Mohammed 4. But I think 2 through 4 for me is honestly pretty close to interchangeable. I would say Keels is my number 1, and then 2 through 4 is pretty close.
Yeah, and it's ironic because we have the exact same list.
Let's go. Same page. So what for you puts that 2 through 4 in the same order?
Um, Ingram, he's obviously, I wouldn't say better, but if you just look at games and stuff, I'd rather have him than the last two guys. And the last two guys are very good as well, but just in this aspect, Muhammad. I mean, just because he's not flashy or it's kind of a hit or miss with him. Sallis, the potential is there, but out of Keels and Ingram, you kind of know what you're going to get, even though at the same time you don't know. So I
Mhm.
guess I would say what you're going to get more with those two guys than the other two guys.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I think I agree with that. Salas is a Salas and Muhammad are two kind of guys who you're still wondering where they fit, even though they have a lot of great tools. So I think I agree with you there. I think that wraps up the portion of our kind of breakdown session. Usually after this, we have kind of a commitment roundup. There hasn't been a whole lot of news other than Sky Clark going to Kentucky. I feel like I'm not that surprised, honestly. Sky Clark is awesome, and Kentucky is just penciling in number one recruiting for guards. So that happened. I do have one question I want to ask you though, because you brought up Tyrese Halliburton, and I think it's really interesting as we get closer to the NBA draft. Um, let's talk about Halliburton for a minute as a guy who's a top 10 prospect in this draft. Some people have him going maybe back into the top five. Some people like him in the late lottery, honestly. So he's got a wide range. Where do you see Halliburton right now in this draft class?
I see him in that 5 to 10 range, honestly, man. He's probably, people are gonna say Lamelo Ball and stuff like that, man. And I honestly think he's better than Lamelo because
Wow.
even though Lamelo played overseas and pro ball and stuff like that, he averaged good stats. We're talking about a guy that played in the NCAA and averaged, almost 20 and 10. This guy was averaging a double double against in the Big 12 as well. So you're playing against schools like Kansas and the West Virginia defenses and stuff. You kind of know what you're going to get. Very long guard at 6'5". It's just there, man. He's probably the best point guard in the draft, in my opinion.
Wow. That is high praise. I mean, you think of a lot of the point guards in this class. LaMelo's the guy who's probably consensus number one. A lot of people like Killian Hayes, I know. Um, there's number one point guard in the draft is high praise. So I guess my question to you would be a lot of people, the criticism of Halliburton is that he's just not physically strong enough to be a top guy in the NBA, and he also isn't enough of an attacking kind of player, and that combination of not a lot of strength and not a lot of aggressiveness is going to hurt him. How how do you feel about that? Is that something that you think is legit, or do you think that's overblown?
I think they have a valid point, but I don't think it's to the extent of what they're saying it as. uh, just by watching him for so long. That's not his game, and he sticks to his strengths. And if you're going to criticize a player for sticking to his strengths, then you might as well criticize a lot of guys in the NBA, preferably the defensive oriented guys and stuff like that who try to do something on offense. He's not a strong taker, or he's kind of a perimeter player. And on the defensive aspect, I think his length and the way he plays, his IQ, he talks a lot. He gets a lot of deflections. I think he doesn't need to be in a physical aspect. I think if you switch up top, and, if he ever gets caught in a pick and roll situation, I think he'll be able to deflect a lot of passes because of his length.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And he like obviously he's such a high IQ player. That's been the biggest plus for his stock. And so you mentioned as high as you are on him, he's probably going in the 5 to 10 range. Of those teams, is there a fit you like? Whether it's you got the Cavs at 5, Hawks at 6, Pistons are 7, Knicks are 8, Wizards are 9, I think, and then 10 is the Suns. Are there any teams that stand out to you as far as a fit there?
I'd probably say the Suns, honestly. If you put Halliburton in a backcourt with a guy like Devin Booker,
Yeah.
that's an interesting backcourt right there. You have your pass first guard, you have your scorer, and then you have Cam Johnson and Aiden, Mikal Bridges. The Suns' young core proved in the bubble that they're improving, and you saw guys like campaign and stuff. Todd Jerome is there as well. They have guards, but I think they don't really have a starting point guard, and I think Halliburton can come in and be that starting guard. Even though you have to work with him a little bit, but he could honestly be that starting guard for the Suns.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's a great fit, honestly. Just having someone like Devin Booker to take the pressure off of him to be a scorer, and you also have another number of great scoring options. Obviously, Aiton, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson's coming along better than I thought, honestly. So yeah, I was surprised. I was so surprised by that pick last year, and so far, I mean, it's solid. He's been pretty good. And I think Halliburton would fit nicely there because he doesn't have to do too much as a creator. Another team is the Hawks that a lot of people have mocked him to is the Atlanta Hawks for two reasons. One, that he can come right in and be the backup to Trae Young and be kind of a safe backup point guard. And then two, if you want to overlap them, Trae Young's going to be able to score. Halliburton's going to be able to defend and be kind of a shooter from a Trae Young pass. How do you feel about a Hawks fit like that?
I think the Hawks, it's a very weird fit, even though I have been seeing a lot of people say that, the Hawks, he should go to the Hawks as well, or the Hawks should draft him. I think the Hawks don't go for someone like him, though, honestly. I think they go for either a big or another wing oriented player. But I can't really see a Tyrese Halliburton. But, like, that Suns pick, man, it's so good. Because if you look at what the Suns are trying to do, basically play a switch defense. Cam Johnson 6'8", Mikal Bridges 6'7". They keeping guys in the 6'7", the 6'8" range, and it would be better because they have small guards besides Todd Jerome. Well, point guards, he's 6'5", and you bring in another guy like Halliburton, who honestly I probably don't even think he's done growing. He's a lot younger than people think. So if he hits like 6'6", maybe I think the league should be put on notice if they already aren't.
Wow. Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point because I mean, look at this draft board, this 5 to 10 range. There's a very real chance Halliburton gets down there because let's say the earliest he goes is 4 with the Bulls. I maybe the Bulls take him because maybe they don't love their guard situation, but Cavs aren't going to take him at 5. Hawks we've mentioned are a potential spot at 6, but then Pistons, I feel like you got to swing for someone with more upside at 7. Same thing with the Knicks at 8. Wizards at 9. Maybe they take him if they're kind of if they're not sold on John Wall coming back. And then I think he's a good fit next to Bradley Beal. But as far as we know, they're sticking with John Wall when he comes back healthy. And then all of a sudden you're at the Suns at 10. So I think he doesn't get past the Suns just because you said that fit is so great.
And if he does get past the Suns, he can be right there at 11 with San Antonio. That's another great fit. We know what Pop can do with players. That's another great player to learn from as well. DeJounte Murray around the same height. Murray is obviously a much better scorer, but still another great player that Halliburton can learn from.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, so I guess that I wanted to get your thoughts on Halliburton as we get closer to the draft, and because this is a kind of a relevant point when we're talking about Hunter Sallis. Otherwise, that was kind of the last thing I had on the agenda. Any important news, whether it's high school, college, NBA draft, that you kind of want to talk about before we wrap up?
Yeah, there's some huge news that I think is going to catch a lot of people off guard, and I think it's legit too. Denai Avicii, the overseas guy that's about 6'9", the next Luka Doncic, they're saying everything.
Mhm.
The Warriors, I think the Warriors had a workout or something with him or watched him, and they really liked him. And I've seen a lot of websites change their mock draft to him at number 2 instead of James Wiseman, which I think is really interesting because we were like, the Warriors have guards and all this. Then you have Andrew Wiggins there, and all the Warriors is missing is a big. Well, now you have a guy that's like Luka Doncic type build, small forward with ball handling, basically the same comparison. Do you see the Warriors actually doing that, even though it seems to be legit?
So I was looking at Denny Avdia, and he's an interesting player. He's different from Luca in that he's not going to be a shot maker like Luca is. He's skinnier, not as well built as Luca is. Um, but he is a great, like, he moves the ball really well. He plays better defense than Luca does. So I think that's helpful too. He's 6'9", long. Obviously, like, played for Maccabi Tel Aviv, which is a great European program. So I like him a lot. And actually, I've always kind of been a little bit concerned about the Wiseman fit with the Warriors. Obviously, like, you think right away, like, okay, he plugs a need at center, and what James Wiseman has a lot of potential, and so that's what people think. It's like, okay, that's kind of where you go. But I really don't think Wiseman is the type of player that fits in their system. Like, he's not that switchable. He's gonna he's gonna be a great finisher and everything, but he's not kind of a multi-positional defender. He's going to kind of be stuck in the paint. Um, and I think that he's got a lot of ways to go on offense. He's not going to move the ball that well. So I actually have always wanted them to. I'm hoping the Warriors find a way to get Okongwu. I think he's a much better fit as a center than James Wiseman is with them. But Avdia is interesting because he's another, like, ball moving, plays defense, never can have too many wings. Although I don't think he'd start this year for the Warriors, but I would not be surprised if they picked him. However, that does, and I was working on my mock draft. I'm doing, like, my yearly pre-draft mock draft, and I just started it today. And if you pencil in Danny Avdia at 2, that throws the entire board into chaos because, like, you have, I'm assuming, LaMelo 1, or maybe Anthony Edwards 1, Avdia 2, Hornets, you got to take LaMelo or Edwards at 3, whoever the other one is. And then 4, all of a sudden, you're left with um, James Wiseman, and there are a lot of places where he might not go to. Obi Toppin, apparently a lot of people like him, and is probably going to end up as a top 5 pick. So Obi Toppin, I'm guessing that's probably the Cavs who would take Obi Toppin, even though that's a weird choice for them to make. Um, but the Bulls aren't going to take James Wiseman. Cavs might not take James Wiseman. The Hawks probably won't. Maybe they will, but probably aren't going to take James Wiseman. Um, Wiseman could fall down to 7 with the Pistons, which I think is pretty. Like, if Avdia goes 2, either Obi Toppin or James Wiseman's going to fall on draft night, and I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's funny because as you were like breaking that down, I'm looking at NBADraft.net right now, and you were kind of hitting it spot on because they have Edwards at 1. Um, how do you say his name again?
It's Denny Avdia, I think.
Yeah, they have him at 2, LaMelo at 3, Killian Hayes at 4 to the Bulls. So I think that's something
Okay.
that you were talking about with the Bulls taking the guard. If they're
Mhm.
not sure about their guard aspect. Um, Obi Toppin at 5, like you said, to Cleveland. Um, they have Okongwu going to Atlanta. How do you feel about that?
That's interesting. I love Okongwu so much. I think he's a top. I'd probably put him top three in this draft class. I think he's so awesome. Um, and I think he'd be a good fit with the Hawks. The only thing is, I feel like the Hawks, if they just traded for Clint Capella, they probably are kind of committing to him as their center. So I feel like it would be kind of weird for them to draft a guy like that, especially when John Collins really is kind of a 4-5. He's not really like just a power forward, but I think it's a good fit for the Hawks because they just need defense, and Okongwu's going to bring that and pass the ball well too. So I don't mind that.
Yeah, and then they have Devin Vassell at to Detroit, Isaac Okoro to New York, and then Wiseman at to the Wizards. Which I'm a Wizards fan. I would have no problem with that
Yeah, that would be
at all.
awesome for the Wizards, and would really like turn a lot of heads if he fell to 9. I feel like Wiseman's been a consensus top 3 guy this entire time, and so if he fell to 9, that would be pretty crazy.
I think Florida State is underrated now that I think about it because you're saying Devin Vassell, and then they have Patrick Williams at number 10, two Florida State guys in the top 10. That tells you what Leonard Hamilton is doing. And honestly, that's why I believe Scotty Barnes will be a top 2 pick in the 2021 draft.
Do you say top 10?
Top 2,
You think
maybe.
top 2?
Bro, Scotty Barnes and me, people hates it because not only is it like just I love Scotty Barnes, it's like I'll just get to spitting out facts and attributes and stuff like that.
I man, you are, and there are a lot of Scotty Barnes lovers out there, and I think you're the biggest one. But yeah, Florida State is, especially like, they've always churned out like good NBA draft guys, but now it's all like they're getting a lot of one and dones. Like Vassal's a one and done. Patrick Williams is a one and done. I'm 99% sure. And they're both deserve to be in the lottery. Like they're both great prospects. And Scotty Barnes kind of fits that mold. They've done so well with a lot of their kind of wing small ball fours. Jonathan Isaac, Patrick Williams, Scotty Barnes. I mean, there's more too that I'm forgetting. And they and Scotty Barnes, I don't know if I could go top 2, but I would not be surprised if he was lottery, a top 10 pick. Um, top 2 is top 2 is very tricky just because you need I think a lot of those top picks, we all know Cade's going 1. And then 2, I feel like you just need someone if you're picking in the top 2 that's going to be more of a star scorer. That's like Jalen Green, Brandon Boston, maybe.
I forgot. I forgot about all of those guys that's in the G League. That's on the G League team.
Yeah, the G League. Like, who knows if I feel like Kaminga's probably going a little lower, but who knows if Kaminga shows out because he's physically ready to take on the G League. But I mean, Scotty Barnes is really good too. Like, he is the most Florida State guy they could have ever asked for. So maybe he just maxes out with Florida State and is a top 2. Who knows?
I've heard a lot of reports. Don't be surprised if you see Scotty Barnes at the 1 this year. And
At the 1?
yes, I've tried to tell people the ball handling is that legit. It doesn't look like it, but it's honestly that legit, man. That's how serious it is.
Okay, well, you've made me way more excited than I already was to watch Florida State this year. So we will, again, college could not come fast enough whenever that happens. So Scotty Barnes, one to watch. I think that wraps up this episode. I feel like we're about hitting the hour mark. So we timed that pretty well. Any last thoughts from this one? We're going to get into, as we get closer to the draft, more draft coverage. As we get closer to the college season, more college breakdowns for incoming freshmen. But until then, anything else?
I think my last thoughts is I think you guys should be prepared for a draft episode after hearing this last portion. After we talked about the recruits, because this is an interesting draft. It's going to be exciting to watch.
It is a crazy draft. We're going to have how we probably will have. We got to do a mock draft on air at some point. That's got to be an episode. Maybe we look at big boards. Maybe we go positional rankings. We'll we got plans in the works for sure because it's draft time, and that's honestly for me probably the best time of the year. I'm excited, so we'll see.
Yeah, I'm a guy that watched the draft 1 through 60, and then right after it, I'm looking at all the undrafted guys who immediately get signed after the draft. So this is very important to me.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, we will be back with another episode. May or may not be either continuing on 2021 or getting started on the NBA draft. We'll see what happens. But until then, thanks so much for tuning in, listening to us. You can follow us on Twitter at Podcast Crystal. Crystal Basketball Pod is on Instagram. We're also on TikTok, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Leave a review, obviously, if you like what we do. If you have constructive criticism, we're here to take it. So let us know what you think. Otherwise, thanks so much for Rashad Landers. I'm Ethan Fuller. We'll be back at you soon with another episode, and we'll see you next time.